we receive what you focus on. We, the human
Yep.
being, is such a powerful individual, such
So
a
powerful.
powerful machine that when we focus on the thing that you are what you eat. That's what it is. If you're
You
eating, and
know what?
again, I'm talking about your mind as far as you focusing and you're eating negative emotion and negative energy, you are what you eat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, it is an honor to welcome our guests, and I like to take the time to honor them and want to say to them, come and share with us, because I know they're coming with a couple of things, very expensive time. 24 hours has been offered to every one of us. What we do with that precious 24 hours, man, will tell me a lot about you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created those who have embarked on it. Why? It has deposited a couple of things in them, wisdom, knowledge, insights, and all these things. And we want to honor JC for coming, because you have to be in a vulnerable state to allow us to access to that data, if you will. So we want to honor him and thank him for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. JC, thank you so much for coming, man.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Likewise, man, I'm looking forward to it. As I mentioned to you, one of the questions that I love to level at those that show up, and I want to start it off right, if you will. And that question is, and it goes to that other aspect of our journey, the latter part. If I tell people, hurry up and get there, that place of a servant. How do you serve mankind?
How do I start?
Mankind.
Say it again.
How do you serve mankind? How do you show up, if you will,
Yeah.
as an individual
I
that
think you may have seen in my book on the third or fourth page at the very beginning of the book, it says simply, I am third. And I put that in there without any explanation because I feel like my journey in this lifetime has been first and foremost, everything is connected to the universal power, the higher power of God. And that is an incredible spiritual connection that I feel and I have felt my whole life. And secondly, I'm here to serve others. And so that's the second thing in my things of priority in my life. And I consider my life to be third, that all of my interests, everything follows from God being first, others serving others being second, and me being third. And in fact, my license plate is I am third also.
It's not a bad license plate, not a bad rotation, if you will, as to the pinnacles of one's life and showing and laying out the importance of that particular process and the relationship with each group, if you will, each individual. So one of our customs here is to go back, JC. I like going back. I call it the beginnings of our beginnings. And the first location that we hang out with for a few years while once we hit this planet, and the first location that we're there, and again, it's just for a few years, maybe 20, 10, 15, 18 years. That's first place is called the family. At this unit right here, this
First place
location,
is called a what?
the family.
What's the first place?
That's the family location. We were at this house with
Yes, the
and
family
these
location. Yes.
individuals that call mom and dad. But here is our first station, if you will. And we're going to learn a couple of things there. We're going to learn communication skills. Our beliefs are also developed right here. We're going to learn how we're going to start developing patterns of behavior as a result of those belief systems. We are going to learn to develop mindsets, limitations right here, all of those wonderful things that we're going to learn here in this group, this first location. What was your family unit like?
Yeah. Wonderful. Both of my parents earned master's degrees and PhDs.
Mhm.
My brother earned an MD and an MBA. So no pressure. Uh, we're a very academic family in terms of book learning. And my experience of the world from the very beginning was art and the spiritual connection that I felt to other people. And even in my early days of bicycle racing, I viewed the other racers as bundles of energy that were nearby, and that I was a bundle of energy, and that we could share energy, that I could derive extra power from aligning with them.
Mhm.
And in my family, unit, my family environment, this was a very cerebral family that I was born into, that I chose.
Yeah.
And my mother especially was able to embrace my reality, that I learned differently than the book learning that my brother was really good at. And I had a different kind of skill. She predicted that I would be more likely to be at the front of the room with a microphone leading people, and that Alan, my brother, would be more likely to be a scientist and healing people and finding cures to things and innovating in different ways. And I think both my parents directed us in that way from the very beginning.
That is
So
awesome
it
to
was a
have.
wonderful environment for me to be born into and for me to then grow.
That's powerful, JC, to have that type of support, if you will, from the academic point of view, but also your mom looking at a different approach and seeing you as an individual and seeing that you were a little different. Your approach to learning is different from your brother, and her being able to recognize that and give you the space, if you will, because some family, JC, would criticize an individual like you because you are not just like them. You're not in the same mold, if you will. Once you were afforded that freedom, if you will, how did
Right.
you blossom as an individual in that experiment, if you will, with knowing that your
Yeah.
mom and dad had approached you that way?
From the very beginning, my mother took me to the Museum of Modern Art. We lived on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. My father was a pastor in a church in the financial district. Uh, she was supporting him and at the same time continuing to do her academic work. She would take me to the Museum of Modern Art, and I was introduced to Kandinsky and architects,
Yeah.
Mies van der Rohe and Frank Lloyd Wright. And this had a profound influence on the rest of my life as I wound up as a 14-year-old. She took me to interview at the Taliesin Institute in Spring Green, Wisconsin. We had by
Hmm.
then moved to the Midwest, and she said, you have a skill set that's different from other kids. Maybe architecture is going to be your strong suit. And by then, at age 7, I had picked up the violin. I was I worked my way all the way to the first position in the first violin section. So
Great.
before each performance, I was able to get up and stroke the A, and everybody would in the orchestra would tune to my instrument. And I had to work probably 3 hours a day at the violin as a child, and that was a form of study for me that was different from my brother,
Hmm.
um, who couldn't even sing with the radio. It was a very different. We each had our skill sets, but mom found a way to nurture that, and so she took me to interview, because that's when they would bring students into the Taliesin Institute, was around their 14th or 15th year. And I interviewed with Frank Lloyd Wright's wife.
Wow.
I'm dating myself, but Olgivanna Wright was still
Yeah.
alive then. And Frank Lloyd Wright had passed on. But I was influenced profoundly by the Guggenheim Museum and his other work in New York. And we lived in Columbus, Ohio. There was a Frank Lloyd Wright inspired neighborhood of 42 homes. And one of my best friend's mother was the architect of those homes. And so I was immersed in this from the very beginning. I will tell you, I did not become an architect, but that thread carried all the way through my college years. When I wound up at Princeton later, my first department where I studied was the architecture department. So, I think genius comes in a lot of different places in a lot of different ways, but it can be easily snuffed out or it can be nurtured. And in my case, I was very fortunate that my mother saw that I had a different kind of skill, and she helped to nurture that.
That is awesome. Again, for her to recognize that and approach it in that fashion is awesome. And you'd mentioned that your dad was a pastor, and so because when you're talking, you said you were open to the spiritual realm, and I was wondering where. Now it makes sense where it would come from. Talk to me about, because you said it was around 12 years old and that you was led towards the bike.
That I
How
was what?
riding a bike. How did that come about? I mean, here's this kid doing his thing. Why a bike? How did that attraction take place? What was the catalyst that caused that?
I think I was seeking a certain kind of freedom because as a 4-year-old, I had rheumatic fever. All I knew is that if I went to a hospital, I was going to die. I feared hospitals because I thought that that was a place where people died. And so I refused to go to the hospital. And as a result of the fever, the rheumatic fever, I got a heart murmur. And so one of my valves had not healed correctly after the inflammation of the rheumatic fever. And by age 6, I was always hooked up to a EKG machine, and they were a Byzantine mess of wires and things back then, the pens that scratched across a page, thing digital, and I had to receive shots to protect myself from becoming sick again. And the physicians told this little 6-year-old boy that he would never be able to do sports.
Hmm.
And all I wanted was a baseball glove and a ball and a bat.
Yeah,
We dream of the one thing we can't have. And so at age 10, my grandparents gave me a little bit of money and I was able to buy a catcher's mitt and 3 baseballs. And I paced off the distance from second base to home plate because I wanted to be able to throw somebody out at second base
yeah,
as a catcher. I wanted to be the catcher. Since the catcher didn't have to run, I thought maybe I could convince my mother to let me play baseball.
yeah.
And I became really pretty good at hitting that target right
Hmm.
around the lower part of your calf from home base to second base. And I literally threw the skin off all 3 baseballs practicing. They were leather balls and they had threads and they would scuff up against the concrete steps on my house. And I learned to be, as good a catcher as I could possibly be. And she said, well, we're going to buy you a 1-speed bike so that you can get to baseball practice because you've earned it. And that was the first thing. That was my first freedom at age 10 was to ride the bike alone to the baseball diamond. And I learned quite a few lessons through Little League. But on the backside of that, around my 10th year, my dad left. He left our family. And while we were initially devastated, my mother had a really positive viewpoint of this new phase that we moved into as a family of 3. And she said, I've always wanted to go to Europe. We don't have much money, but I bought a book called Europe on $5 a day. And so we bought 10-speed bicycles with the assistance of my grandfather.
Mhm.
And we practiced and we planned our trip. And we took a charter flight from Toronto to London. And we rode 100 miles radius of London, hitting all the big sites. And then we took a train over to France and we rode the entire perimeter of France in about 42 days,
As a
about
family, JC?
2,500. At age 13, I rode the perimeter of France, on a 10-speed bicycle with my brother and my mother. And that was really the beginning. It started with the baseball and riding myself to the baseball games, but it grew into something that I really loved. And we enjoyed that trip so much that we spent the winter planning a trip from Seattle to Boston by bicycle.
Wow.
And so that
That's
that next year we rode 4,000 miles in about 40 days. And that was the beginning of a lifelong pattern that has just been an amazing journey for me. I discovered that I love doing these long bike rides. I had some kind of a skill set for it. I loved the adventure. And everywhere we went, even in France, I had only about a half a year of French in school
yeah.
when I was 13. But being in France, I could watch how the French people formed their language,
Mhm.
how they spoke, the way their intonation, everything about the language became real and alive. And I was able to mimic their facial patterns when I spoke their words.
Yeah.
And it accelerated my
Learning.
engagement with the language of French. And I've continued to study it all through school because of that trip.
And that's a beautiful story, JC. I mean, here's mom. What a powerful woman she is to have that kind of courage, because that's a courageous thing for a mom after
Yes.
a dramatic and traumatic situation like that to say, "Hey, I've always wanted to do this. Let's do this. I got this book, and let's do it, but let's do it on bikes."
Yeah.
I think that
Right.
is absolutely powerful for a couple of young men to engage on a journey with their mom. That's a courageous woman, and what a experience that she afforded you both to have as young men on that had a situation, again, very traumatic, a separation in the home. But when you are out there on the road, you're going to learn a couple of things. You're going to learn how to deal with those thoughts that are coming in your head concerning the family separation. You're going to learn all kinds of wonderful things because what? Because you have time. You have an opportunity whereby the imagination can be explored, and you can think about something. Whereas before you may be too busy or whatever, but here on this bike, you can think. And when you begin to process those thoughts, you kind of able to walk through some of the trauma a little faster than you had if you were just locked up in a building dealing with all the different things that way. I love that your mom did that
Yeah.
for you guys.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a friend of mine, Michael Mendiza, who is a videographer, and he interviewed hundreds of athletes about what was the trigger that allowed them to rise to the top of their sport. And what he discovered was the parents of those kids, instead of asking them, what place did you get? What was your time? What did you do wrong? Right. At the end of the race, the first question that the parents posed to the child was, how do you feel? And when we ask a child that, they realize not only that you deeply care about them,
Hmm.
that it's not about the place, it's not about the time, it's about you and your experience. And there's a more recent study that validates this is that in the top 5 athletes at every sport, the one thing that distinguishes them is not nutrition or training, it's how they speak to themselves,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And so this is a unique thing that the very top athletes do. When you miss a shot in tennis, their self-talk is, what a great sport. Can't believe that I get to do this for a living. I'm in the best place of my life right here and right now. And that enables them to let go of the bad stroke or the tough climb where you got dropped by the leaders, or the running race where you get detached from the lead of the race and you need to get back to the lead, and you remind yourself that I'm in the best sport. I chose the best sport for me. And this is the best time of my life. Whatever's happening today is going to pass. And I'm going to continue to move through this life in enjoying this sport. And it's extraordinary the power that that positive attitude has on the results for those athletes.
And as an athlete myself, I understand exactly that, especially when a basketball player or any one of those sport guys, you see that they're in a quote unquote slump. It's because their mind is in a slump. And they have folks now that are there to assist them with readjusting that mindset. And once they do that readjustment, then everything will get back on what they call the flow, get back in the zone, stuff like that. That's the language that they're using. But it is a wonderful place. My thing is, that's why I always tell people, JC, is to get into sports, arts, and stuff like that, because if you can translate what you speak and how you speak to yourself on the field and within the other arena and bring it into your life, it will change your life just like it does on the court. And you have to
Yeah.
bring that language in your everyday life. And we call those affirmations and all those things. But when you bring those things into your space, it does have an effect, just like it does on an athlete. And that's what the journey is about. It is about reconnecting, reprogramming the mind into the positiveness of life and what it has afforded you and what you can get from there. And even in your darkest of times, if you refocus, because if you it tells us that we receive what you focus on, we, the human being, is such a powerful individual, such
So
a
proud.
powerful machine that when we focus on the thing that you are what you eat. That's what it is. If you are
You
eating, and
know,
again, I'm talking about your mind as far as you focusing and you're eating negative emotion and negative energy, you are what you
yeah,
eat.
right.
It's a principle. So you have to learn to eat well in the mindset where you are now going to bring positive affirmation into your mind, into your heart as you move through. Here's this wonderful experience you got with mom, and you guys continued that and said it made such an impact in you that even today you continue that practice. As you we're moving through life, JC, and you're getting older. You talk a little briefly about your college days and stuff like that. Talk to me about when you got there. How was that? How were you able to still maintain your love for the bike and riding and still approach your academic studies as well? How did you manage that as an individual as you're getting older in life, if you will?
Yeah. Well, and I've fallen off my bike more than 100 times. It's not about falling. We say that all the time about sports. It's how you get up.
Yeah.
One of the things that my mother was fond of saying to us when we would crash is she would rush over to the bicycle. She would say, "Is the bike okay?" And, you know, we're over there bleeding in the curb and she's looking at the bike and she intuitively knew that if the bike was okay, we could continue and she could patch us up later. And we learned that this is the way you live is that first the goal and next your brethren and then you, right? And there's a fascinating story about Tiger Woods that I read and it reflected something from my own life about coaching. And that is that, like you said, all athletes will get into a slump at some point. And the amateurs have 3 or 4 skills that have always worked for them, and they turn to those skills. And oftentimes that's not enough
Mhm.
to get them out of the slump. And Tiger developed an inventory of about 60 skills that he worked on assiduously with his coach. And when he would get into a slump, he would turn to the 6 or 8 skills that were directly related to the area where he was losing his sharpness. And he could always tap into others from that list of 60. But first of all, he was coachable and he allowed himself to be coachable and to listen to another person looking at him. And then to really practice those specific skills that relate to the slump that you're in now. And from the very beginning, my very first bike race, my brother coached me where to sprint. He said, "I'm going to walk backwards on the course and I'm going to yell, 'Go, John, go,' at the point on the course on the third lap where I want you to begin your sprint." And he knew what my capacity was. He knew of my coachability. And I was able to follow his instructions and I executed based on that. And I won the race, my very first race. And it instilled in me that notion that if we allow ourselves to be coached and we're selective and we work with coaches who get us, right? It gets important. We're always going to come out better. We're going to get out of that slump. And that is for me the life of learning that I bring up in the book, which is I've been able to apply that coachability to all aspects of my life, whether in business, family, work, cycling, my spirituality, all of those areas of my life. I feel like I have allowed myself to be coachable, and it's made all the difference.
Yeah, the one of the advice that I try to give people, don't separate things. Allow all of you to be a part of you. We have a tendency where we separate work. We separate this, we separate that, but you are you. And so as I learn my personal development about me, it will affect all the other areas. You got to, and we have been programmed to separate them. And in separating or segmenting them in our life, we become incomplete and we're not able to function at the highest optimum level, if you will, when we are broken into pieces like that. But when we began to put ourselves together, your spiritual, your everything, all of it, that you will see that those principles are all a part of your life, and it helps you to enrich your spirituality, your family, relationship, all of it. And so I always try to advise people to don't segregate your life. Allow your wholeness to be there, all of you to be a part of your life. And when you
Yeah,
do that, there's a
yeah,
clarity that is so much more profound and that is available for you to be able to become more effective in obtaining the things that you would like in your life. But when you're segmented, you can't do it. You're broken and you need to learn how to do that. Talk to us, JC, as you got into the sports part of it, the competitive part and all those different things. As you're growing again, you're moving, we're getting older, quote unquote, getting into our adult life or independence. As someone like yourself who've done your traveling, you're in sports, you're competitive, all of the different things, the arts, the music, talk to us as to that blending of all, the uniqueness, the unifying of our life, our individuality to
yeah,
become
yeah.
JC, to become. Talk to us about how
Right.
important that is.
I think we're in a constant state of becoming.
Yes, me too.
And not only is that an attractive way to say it, I think it's a wonderful way to experience it. And that is that there's a little bit of a misnomer that's used out there called work-life balance.
Yes.
For me, life is bicycling, it's gardening, it's
Yes.
my community involvement, and my work is entrepreneurship and helping early stage business owners get from the idea to customers and revenue. And most people think of those as two completely separate things. And you speak about this unifying element, which I think is so crucial. We talk about work-life balance as though they're sitting on opposite ends of a seesaw.
Yeah.
And the reality is it should be viewed as work-life integration.
Hmm.
And that
Yes.
results in a soul lifting
Yes.
relationships that extend beyond work, beyond family, to allow you to continue to become who you
Yes.
intended to be in this life. And so I think what's happened for me is that I have these wonderfully uplifting parts of my life that I hold together. And I think the more that we hold those together, that's allowed me to extend my athletic activity and performance into my later years. I'm now 68 and I feel like I'm stronger than I was 15 years ago physically. And I think I have, because of the challenges that I've been through over the last 15 years, I feel like I'm stronger mentally.
Yes.
We'll talk about this probably in a little bit, but 13 years ago, I was hit by a car broadside on my bicycle, and the car was going 50 miles an hour, and I was thrown 100 feet. It would have been fatal for probably anyone else, but I was training. I was training for rowing, and I was cycling, and I had the most amazing encounter with God in the ambulance. Can I share it right now?
Yeah. Let's go into that because it is important. Life is not a linear approach. There's no such thing as a linear life. There's nothing like that. That's a lie. Let's throw that aside. Those dark times, opportunities for growth will always show up in dark times. You can't, people are not wired to grow when it is the good times. We are wired to grow in the difficult times. Talk to us about that. Here's you're living your life, and one of my gurus said, "Allow life to disturb your comfort," and your life got this, your comfort got a little disturbed from this particular situation when it happened. Talk to us about that, because again, you're going to have to learn about this thing right here, because this has have to assist you to move this frame that is now damaged and is not working as it was before. So talk to us about that, your encounter with
Yeah.
God, that relationship, and how did you begin to manage one step at a time from from that space right there, JC, to begin to move out from there?
Yeah. Uh, Actually, I refer to it as my three C's. I had a crash on my bicycle. 5 years later, I got cancer, really severe cancer diagnosis. And 2 years after that, 3 years after that, I had a most severe COVID experience. And I think what carried me through each of these was that feeling in me that I was grateful that I was the first one through the intersection on that day when the car hit me. I never would have had the epiphany of the emotional wealth framework without having that setback. I wouldn't have experienced all of my communities showing up for me and realized that we have these emotional bank accounts that we can draw upon in a time of crisis. I think once I understood that I had these, and now I have this new diagnosis of prostate cancer. It was almost a 4 level, the most severe kind of cancer. And I decided to proactively tap into my resources because I was now aware of those resources and my family, my work. I called my boss and I said, listen, this new setback in my life, I don't know how I'm going to manage it, but I want you to know I will return as soon as I can. And he said to me, you give us your bank account numbers, we'll put the checks in, you heal up. And I realized that I had paid it forward.
Yeah.
That I had a balance there in that relationship, that he was willing to continue to contribute my salary during a time when I couldn't work. I couldn't do the work for me. So I think, first of all, I had a terrible prediction by the surgeons when I got hit by the car. They said, if you work hard, you can probably learn to walk, but you should not hope to ride your bicycle again. And at the time, I was paralyzed on my left side. I had flown 100 feet, landed on my face. It's awful outcome. And I learned to walk. It was very painful. A lot of my therapy sessions ended in tears, and they would put me back in the wheelchair and wheel me back to my room. And, it was a very low time. I decided to make a game of they had me on a device where I would have to suck in air to try to re-establish my lung capacity after the accident. And so I made a contest of it. And I realized that I could get that tube a little bit
Yeah.
higher. Each day it would get a little bit higher and in the tube. And I was I could not wait every day for those tests. I would do it 3 or 4 times a day, and it gave me something to look forward to, in spite of the fact that I was being pushed around in a wheelchair. And as a performance athlete, I wasn't used to that. Relying on others was something that was hard for me to do. So I think having a daily routine, especially after my prostate surgery. I kept an everyday journal. And I had people who were praying for me and calling me every single day from different parts of my life. So I was able to journal about those interactions. And I came to some conclusions about, if you have a guest room in your home, you should really use your guest shower at least once a month, even though you don't need to. You should turn on the TV in that room, or you should sleep in that bed, even when you don't need to, because at some point you might have to. And I wasn't able to climb stairs during the first part of that journey, and so I would just walk in figure eights in my living room to begin walking again. And
Yeah.
eventually I was strong enough that we could go outside and walk around the yard and then eventually walk in the neighborhood. I think that by choosing one small thing to do each day and keeping track of it and celebrating the others who were on the journey with me, it really made all the difference.
I hope you guys are listening to JC with that because he just laid out some powerful principles right in that whole dissertation that he allowed us to listen. So much powerful stuff. Finding one's tribe, man, or as he put it, his community. That is such a powerful piece to have in your life. Find it. Find your, whether it's a therapist, friends, family, find your community and hold on tight. The other is don't allow limitations. Even the doctors, they work in a world of limitations. That's what the doctors,
Yeah.
that's their arena. But their limitations shouldn't be yours. You take the information and knowledge and okay, and you can go and do research. There are people that are have been in that situation. If you would like to, we call it back in corporate America, to model oneself. There are people out there that has been through similar things, and you can go get data and model yourself. But all of them will tell you the same thing, one step at a time. You're not going to be able to get to where you expect to be. And that's another thing that you'll have to put down on a little is your expectation and allow your progress, if you will, to dictate your expectation and not your expectation to do things. Because if you are not getting to a certain degree, a certain way based on your expectation, you can get frustrated and quit and all those different things. So you have to learn how to manage all of that. But your goal will always be to the next day to do a little better than you did before. And some days you can't do that. You're just drained. It's okay. Allow yourself the space to rest. And then, okay, I rest. Now I have to do this. And you have that conversation with yourself. I'm telling you guys, I was an athlete. I got hurt. I know what all of this stuff does. I know about our expectation to get there. That, you know, allow your expectation, put it on the side and give yourself some breathing room and allow the process to be your guide, and your community will be there to walk with you too. I hope you guys were really paying attention because there's so much in there. Go back and listen to it again. Talk to me as you're moving through, because I know the the wrestling piece of the mind, and again, because of the mind, that's where this battle is. The limitation that I grew up in the church, JC, and Jesus said, all things are possible to him who believes. And for me, I put it this way: all things are possible to that believing man. And so it's up to you to, if you want to be that believing man, because he said all things are possible. So then that is your choice. And now find data to help you to go to that space and how to get there from A to B. There are people out there that are willing to help you, walk with you, hold your hands, and uh, to help you get to your vision. It is important that you share with your friends, your family, those
Yeah.
close to you.
Yeah.
Let them know what's on your heart, what you're trying to achieve. And you would be amazed at how they would be there to encourage you when you get tired. They'll say, yeah, bro,
Yeah.
come on, man. You can do this. I'm here with you. And they will walk with you. Don't be afraid to call on them, man. That's why they're there. They are willing to walk with you. JC, talk to me as you're moving through, man, and you began to get to a place where you're now writing books, but before you even write the books, man, you're learning principles, picking up, you're getting insights coming to you through all of this. You can only become resilient through pain. There's no other way. Hardship. That's how That's where resilience is given birth from hardship. And one always, I heard someone talk about, oh, I want to be resilient. Like, you better be careful what you're asking for because you got to go through a lot of pain to get to that. So be very mindful of what you're talking about. But all of this, all of this changes, JC, and you began to notice certain things about the human being, the subconscious being that the religion will call him the soul of the man. You began to learn some principles and you saw it. And as you're beginning to watch that, an outcome, dreams, desires, all those things that you have internally, and then the branches that are necessary to begin to apply, to utilize, to bring it, to assist you to acquire those desires. As you saw that, how did it begin to give birth to that framework that you develop in your book? And you can put it up, JC, and let them see what we're talking
Okay.
about.
Yeah, sure.
How did you
Sure.
get to that, number one, first? And then how did you begin to put it together into that format that you have today?
Sure. I'll do that. I'll share my screen there. But I do want to say that at moments when we required reassurance, as I was young, my mother was fond of saying to us, "Don't worry, nothing is going to be okay." And you know, it sounds negative when you first think about it, but then you realize what she meant. And it took me a long time to really integrate this into my life. And that is that things are not going to go your way in life. Your job is not going to hand something to you that you want. Physically in sports, you're going to struggle, you're going to fail. There are all kinds of projects in your life that you dream about that aren't going to go your way. And then you're going to have a physical setback, or you're going to have a divorce, or you're going to get fired from your job. And these require you to look at life and understand that if that's the paradigm, that nothing's going to be okay. Well, in fact, I can arrive for life a little bit over prepared. I'm going to be super prepared. I don't have to be obsessive about it, but I want to develop a skill set mentally and intellectually and spiritually so that I can have things not go my way
Mhm.
and I can still thrive. And I think that's what enabled me to get through these setbacks. And from my scouting days, kids would come to me and say, "How can I be like you, Mr. Chamberlain?" And I'd say, "Well, what is it that, how's your emotional bank account with your parents?" They say, "Well, I want to go to this movie or to this concert, and my parents don't want me to go." And I say, "Well, how's your emotional bank account with your parents? Have you done something lately that they didn't expect you to do? Have you helped out around the house above and beyond, kept your room without being asked, done your homework?" They would ask me, what's this? And I'm not familiar with the concept of an emotional bank account.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, do you have a savings account?" "Well, yeah, I have a savings account. I earn $10 mowing grass, and I put $10 in the bank. And sometimes my parents will match that." And I said, "That's a wonderful example of a savings account. And let's now work on your emotional bank account with your parents. So this is one where they trust you more. And that's an element of your relationship with your parents." And so this evolved through my interactions with Boy Scouts. And after I was hit by the car, I had a lot of time to think. And I came to the conclusion that these 6 areas of my life were, really the essence of this framework. And this is the framework I'm displaying right here from my webpage. And I sent it off to my mom. I said, "It's our health and our learning, our life of learning, earning, giving back, our love relationships, and our connection to the divine and the spirit." And she said, "Well, that's great, and I think you're really onto something, but you're missing one." It's a classic for my mom to,
Yeah.
I was never quite enough. Right. And so she would always push me. And I said, "Well, what am I missing?" And she said, "Well, all of this is great, but everything begins with your dreams. And if you have a dream, then you can aspire to something. And if you aspire to something, then you can be inspired toward a goal.
Yeah.
And once you are inspired toward a goal, you can perspire
Yeah.
to achieve that goal. And then that leads you into the other six parts of your framework there. So you have to aspire, inspire, and perspire. And I thought she was onto something with that. And so I put dreams at the beginning and the end of everything that we do in the emotional wealth framework. And the reason I chose wealth, Wellth, is because it's a fusion of the word wellness
Mhm.
and health and financial stability, which normally would be written Wealth. And the reason I've used these seven in concert in a shape of a wheel is that it reflects my concept of the turning wheel of a bicycle. And each one of these has further elements that we explore through a workbook that's included with each chapter.
Mhm.
And there's a story that helps the reader understand the concept. And then they can integrate the concept into their own life by using the workbook that's in each chapter. So that's kind of how it came together for me. One more thing I like to add there that my mother would say is that remember, we're all in this alone. Once again, you think, wow, you had a rotten childhood. First of all, nothing's going to be okay. And now we're all in this alone. Break it down for me.
Yeah.
Well, what she meant was you're responsible for your filament, for your little thread
Yeah.
that is in the universe, and it is part of this grand fabric that we call humankind. And it is your responsibility. And you
Mhm.
take it seriously, uh, fabric of humankind is going to be stronger. It's going to be better. Remember, we're all in this alone.
Yeah. And guys, it's you're taking ownership. Show them the book cover, JC, because guys, and we're going to provide the links for you guys to get to JC and buy these books. And I've been telling you guys, we live in a different paradigm today. And I believe that groups of you, and I've been saying this for about a year and a half, 2 years now, groups need to buy books and sit down. You guys read the book, create a nice little book club as a group of your friends. Hey, let's do this. Just try it. And you pick a book, JC's book, and you read it. Each one of you guys read the book. You have the workbook and all this, and then come together, sit down and have discussions about what you saw. And when you do that, you are coming, I'm sure if you have a dozen of you may have a dozen different perspectives. What does that afford you? It affords you a more robust approach to that particular principle. And you will then begin to get a fullness of what JC is talking about for each one of those things because you guys are really digging in deep, asking questions, probing each other, becoming that adversarial person to push your friend a little more. What do you mean by that? And then you take this data, and I promise you, the 12 of you will destroy your problems in your life and where you. And I want you guys to look back, take your notes and whatever, and then look back a year from now, 5 year, 6 months from now, whatever it is. Just form these clubs, buy the books, and I challenge you guys because these men and women that have gone through all of this pain and were given these deep insights, like what JC is talking about, you need to become in this society that we are in today. You need to become more proactive in your approach. You're in this all by
Thank
yourself.
you.
You're in this all by yourself, but you
That is
get
so
yourself
so
your
wonderful
team
to and makes me
and talk
hopeful.
about it, man. This is serious. I'm serious about this, just because you can sense the change within society. You see it all around us. It's not just one country. It's a global approach that we're looking at a dramatic shift. We're looking at shiftment of an empire, the decline of one, the rise of others. We're looking at some major things when we're looking into our current space, guys. And so you want to be prepared as an individual on your subconscious part of you, not just because many of you will lose jobs. Many of you are going to go through some hard times, some hard different times coming, but you got to be ready. And this is how you get ready. You get that book club, you get that data from JC, to learn about this new emotional wealth framework to build that resilience that you're going to need in this time. This is serious. JC, you
My
have,
favorite thing,
go ahead.
Ken, my favorite thing that people say to me when they first put their hands on the book, and it's extraordinary how this is happening, but they read the title, they check it out, and they look at me and they say, "This is arriving just in time. I need to share this with somebody." And that's when you know that the chemistry is right for this framework to be helpful at this time. And it's so gratifying to me to hear people respond that way. It's not just a how-to book, you know. It's something that can really feed your soul. And I'm glad that I was put through the crucible. I never would have had the epiphany, that I came to that resulted in the framework coming together. That was the hard part I had to do, and now it can hopefully be helpful to others.
Yeah, you just get the books, guys. Create a team, even if it's just two of you. Start and invite friends. I'm telling you, buy the books and begin to challenge yourself and become proactive. You have a mic, JC. We're closing up on this. It's been I kept you almost an hour, and I appreciate our conversation. I love this conversation. You have a mic. It is plugged in. We are somewhere a little over 8 billion people on this planet today. And your mic is connected to all of us. And you have an opportunity to speak to us. What would you say?
I would say belonging is so powerful. Join something, join together. Where two of my children are together, I am present too. And this is a theme that I think runs around the earth. It's that when we belong to things, we have superpowers that evolve. And so I would say join something if you're not already part of something. Find people who have like interests, and it will get you up and moving, and it will help you build resilience during this time to whatever's coming your way.
Love it. I'm going to leave it at that. JC, man, this has
Okay.
been a wonderful journey, if you will. And thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of it. Me personally, because I learned much from our exchange. And I appreciate you becoming vulnerable to allow me to see that aspect of you and to drink from your well as far as the wisdom that resides in you. And I know we haven't even began to touch the deepness of that, but I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to get a chance to experience this. I really do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be a resource, and it's been a blessing to be with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.